All right, today we are jumping into one of the most incredible, most iconic stories in the book of Genesis. We're talking about Jacob, a man on the run who has a world-changing encounter at a place he would eventually call Bethel. We're going to see how a dream on a rock pillow became an absolute cornerstone of faith.
And really, the whole story hangs on this one question, something I think we can all relate to. Can a moment of total crisis, when you are at your absolute lowest, somehow become a moment of stunning clarity? Jacob's story is maybe the ultimate example of this.
So let's set the scene. First up, the fugitive. You have to understand, Jacob isn't just on some road trip, he is running for his life. He just tricked his father and stole the blessing from his brother Esau, and Esau wants him dead. So he is completely alone, an exile, running from a past he just destroyed and toward a future that is a total blank.
And it's right here, in this moment of peak vulnerability, a guy on the run with literally nothing but a stone for a pillow, that this unbelievable spiritual encounter happens. And that detail is so important. This doesn't happen in a grand temple or a palace. It happens out in the middle of nowhere, in the wilderness, when Jacob has nothing left.
This, of course, brings us to the absolute heart of the story. Section 2, the heavenly ladder. As Jacob is sleeping on that rock, he has a dream, a vision that people will be talking about for thousands of years.
Just listen to that imagery from the text itself. A ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. I mean, what a picture. It's this direct connection, a physical bridge between our world and the divine. And it's not empty. It's bustling with God's messengers.
So what's this ladder all about? Well, at its core, it's a symbol of a divine link. It's this powerful message that God isn't just stuck in one place, in a holy land or a specific building. His presence extends everywhere, even to a lonely fugitive sleeping on the dirt.
And if we dig a little deeper, the interpretation gets even richer. The ladder itself is seen as this pathway for God's work, its divine action happening. And the angels, they're not just hanging out. Their movement up and down shows God's constant dynamic activity in the world. And get this, centuries later, Jesus himself references this vision, essentially saying, "You see that ladder? I'm the real connection between heaven and earth." Just incredible.
But the dream isn't just a silent movie. God speaks. And that brings us to our third section, an unbreakable promise. Because right there at the top of the ladder, God reaffirms a sacred promise, a covenant that has been passed down through Jacob's family.
And pay attention to how God introduces himself. He doesn't just say, "Hey, I'm God." He says, "I am the God of Abraham and of Isaac." He is plugging Jacob directly into his family's story of promise. He's telling this lonely fugitive, "You belong. This story is your story."
And the promise that God lays out is just massive. It's a four-part deal. First, land. The very ground you're sleeping on will belong to your family. Second, descendants. You'll have more descendants than you can count, like the dust of the earth. Third, a global blessing. Through you and your family, the entire world will be blessed. And fourth, something deeply personal, presence.
And while all four of those promises are cosmic and world-changing, for a guy who's alone, scared, and sleeping in the dirt, one of them is the most important, most crucial assurance he could possibly hear right at that moment.
And here it is. "Behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest." That's not about the distant future. That is a promise for right now, for the very next step he takes and every single step after that. It's a promise of a constant personal companion.
This is the real game changer. This assurance of God's presence is what totally reframes Jacob's situation. As some scholars point out, this is the moment he goes from being just a recipient of a promise to being the bearer of God's mission. He's not just a fugitive anymore. He's a man with a divine purpose and a divine partner for the journey.
So what do you do after an experience like that? How does Jacob even begin to process this? Well, that brings us to our final section, the house of God. Because Jacob's reaction when he wakes up is pure awe, and that awe immediately turns into action.
His first words are just filled with wonder. "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not." He has this sudden, shocking realization that he wasn't just sleeping on some random patch of ground. He was at the gate of heaven itself, and he had no idea.
And this just shows the transformation perfectly. What the Bible first calls just a certain place, a generic, nameless spot, is now given a new name, a sacred identity, Bethel, which literally means house of God. The place didn't change, but Jacob's perception of it changed everything.
And then he does something really powerful. He takes that stone, the very thing that was his pillow of hardship, and he turns it into a pillar of remembrance. He anoints it with oil, setting it apart as holy. And then he gives it the name, forever marking this random spot as the place where he met God.
Jacob then makes a vow. Now, at first glance, it sounds a little conditional, right? If God will be with me, then the Lord will be my God. But he's not really expressing doubt here. It's more like he's laying out the terms of his own commitment. He's basing his entire future, his allegiance, on the promise he just received.
And this is exactly why scholars see this as such a pivotal moment. It's the starting point of Jacob's personal faith. It's where God's top-down promise meets Jacob's bottom-up act of commitment. His faith journey is really just getting started, but it's starting right here, on this spot.
And that leaves us with something to think about. Jacob's ordinary certain place became the house of God, not because the place itself was special, but because that's where he met God in his moment of absolute need. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What unexpected places in our own lives, our own moments of crisis or confusion, can become sacred ground?